around the nation, DYD Nation, Jeff Walder here with you. It's Friday. Welcome to the show. We've got a great show for you guys today to kind of end out the week. We've got some fun news. And we also have, actually, you know what? We have a lot of fun news, but we also have some disastrous news as well, including how we're, of course, still in Syria, still in the Middle East, and actually things are about to get even more escalated. Oh, boy. Okay. So now, first, we get a lot of stories, like I said. We're going to talk about Rudy Giuliani. We got Betsy DeVos getting smacked down in court. That's awesome. We have Republicans flipping out over impeachment. Privately, you're going to love some of the quotes in that story. It's amazing. And then, of course, Joe Biden finally gives up. No, not the race, but gives up trying not to raise money from giant corporate donors. Interesting. So it's going to be great. So stick around. It's a fantastic show. We're going to have a lot of fun. So we'll do this here. But first, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do that. That's one way to get out. We've been having some issues here on YouTube where our viewership has basically been cut in half. So numbers are disastrous. So if you could please share out, that helps out enormously. Okay. So that said, announcement, right? So I'm going to be in Detroit on Sunday. There's a rally, Bernie Sanders rally with Rashida Tlaib. So I'm going to be there. I am going to film it. So I do plan on taking the camera. We're going to film that. I'll have that posted up on YouTube probably either Sunday night or Monday. We'll see about getting that up there. But I'm going to film as much of it as I can. And so should be great. I look forward to going to that rally. I actually just want to pretty much film Bernie Sanders and Rashida Tlaib. So I don't think I'll have enough battery power or space to film everyone else that's going to be there, if anyone else is going to be there. But nonetheless, I will have some video for you guys after the weekend. So, all right. Anyway. Oh, and if you see me there, say hi. Yeah. All right. I think that's pretty much it for announcements. So let's dive into the stories. Let's start out with Giuliani. Oh, you know what? Also, super chats and comments also super important as well. And don't forget Q bounties. There's plenty of other ways to help us out too. So, all right, moving on. Let's go. It has been an incredibly bad couple of weeks for Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. It appears now that his legal troubles are starting to get even worse. So now this is according to Politico. It's an article that states that federal prosecutors have actually begun to dig into Giuliani's links to foreign-born business associates, among other things. So right now, Giuliani is getting scrutiny from the FBI, the district attorney's office based out of Manhattan, and now the criminal division of the Justice Department, according to different sources. Oops. Oh, that's not good. So now, man, what's even worse for him is that Giuliani, when he goes on TV and he blabs and he accidentally says things that he shouldn't, it turns out that he is turning members of the Trump team that he's worked with over the last 18 months into potential witnesses for federal prosecutors. So he comes out and says, oh, yeah, I worked with these guys. Not a problem. Nothing happened. It was all above board. And so not a problem. And then the FBI, federal prosecutors are like, we should look into those guys. It might be a good idea because what you just said, definitely a problem. Oops. Even more. Let me give you a quote here from Greg Brower, served as the FBI's top liaison to Congress until last year. He said, quote, Giuliani appears to be a subject, if not a target, of an active investigation. And he also goes on to explain why Giuliani is not as involved in Ukraine now, in the defense of Ukraine and the impeachment inquiry, as he was previously. He said, quote, "So to have him part of the legal team would be troublesome, to say the least. At best, it's a messy situation, and more likely, it's just completely dysfunctional." No. That notice how he said, at best, it's super messy and dysfunctional. I love it. Then again, of course, messed up, super dysfunctional. That seems to be all things Trump related. So, anyway, so now Giuliani is being looked over. A lot about the situation in Ukraine. Now, investigators related to the impeachment inquiry have been collecting testimony for several weeks from witnesses who put the president's lawyer at the center of a campaign to leverage U.S. military and diplomatic might in exchange for foreign assistance from Ukraine that could help Donald Trump win the second term. So it turns out there is quid pro quo, as we've learned from the testimony of Bill Taylor, as well as Gordon Sondland, who, of course, denied quid pro quo, but was told to say that in the text by the White House itself. So by Donald Trump. So quid pro quo and pressuring a foreign leader. Now, you don't have to have quid pro quo to do impeachment, by the way. But now Giuliani is also swept up in this impeachment for his role in pressuring Zelensky, setting things up, working with other folks that are surrounding this story. We're going to get to those guys too. So now, lawmakers hyper-focused on Giuliani prompted a decision by Trump's legal team to sideline its most famous member from handling any Ukraine matters as part of the president's defense, should Democrats advance a specific article of impeachment addressing the subject, according to a person familiar with the lawyer's strategy. So now he is being sidelined on Ukraine, and there is talk of him, of course, looking for his own lawyer, and that's speculation, among other speculation, that he could face charges on bribery, foreign lobbying registration, you have to register as foreign lobbyist, and disclosures to making false statements to government officials. So he could be in real trouble, is basically what they're saying, right? So now there's also the question of a $500,000 payment Giuliani has publicly acknowledged for receiving work that he did on behalf of a company called, and I love this, Fraud Guarantee. Guarantee fraud. Well, there you go. Perfect place for Giuliani. Now, that specific company was ran by two associates of his, and I tend to call them more henchmen than anything, because they ended up working with Giuliani to try to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. Now, these particular people were named Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman. I'm probably saying the name wrong, but I don't care. It's Igor. Now, those two happened to be arrested earlier this month trying to leave the country. They had a one-way ticket, and they were trying to leave when they were arrested at the airport. Sad. Now, they were charged with orchestrating a scheme to buy political influence on behalf of a Ukrainian government official and a Russian businessman. Now, during an arraignment on Wednesday in New York, one of the topics of discussion among the lawyers and the presiding judge centered around the defendant's work for Rudy Giuliani and possible assertions of attorney-client and executive privilege. So, look, that's important because that goes to the top. Only executives get executive privilege. Only people in the executive branch, I should say. Not good. Now, Rebecca Donaleski, an assistant U.S. Attorney General from the Southern District of New York, who's prosecuting the Parnas-Fruman case, said at the court hearing that Giuliani's communications might have been intercepted by the FBI during the probe. So they might have Giuliani's communications. That includes texts, emails, phone numbers. And if there's anything bad on there, the Southern District of New York has it. And guess who the Southern District of New York is working with? The Department of Justice. Now, then again, look, the Department of Justice and the Southern District of New York, they are separate, right? And got to remember, the DOJ is run by William Barr. Nonetheless, you have the criminal division working with the Southern District of New York. Now, if Barr shuts it down, which would be a huge violation, for one, and it would seem extremely political, which it would be, you still would have the Southern District of New York having that information available to it. So they could continue on with any sort of case. So either way, Giuliani, big trouble, right? So now, then again, we don't know if Giuliani, again, there's a maybe that he had his texts picked up, or his, because investigators obtained information relating to at least a dozen telephone numbers as well as email and social media accounts. Again, those might have been picked up, but we don't know. And if they were, we don't know if there was anything on that was actually potentially criminal. So there's that. But we do know that Parnas, Giuliani, and Fruman spent a lot of time with each other over the last year. In fact, there's one picture from late March taken at the Trump International Hotel, which included a caption Parnas wrote saying that he was at a celebration dinner with Rudy Giuliani and other members of Donald Trump's legal team, including Jay Sekulow, Martin Raskin, and Jane Raskin. So Sekulow is, of course, one of Donald Trump's oldest lawyers. So now that was posted a day after William Barr had released his 4-page memo summarizing the Mueller investigation. That memo, of course, was completely partisan and incredibly off base. But nonetheless, that Mueller memo that he released said that the special counsel would go on to criticize his failing to fully capture the context, nature, and substance of his work. So Mueller criticized that as well, and you guys remember during that hearing. So now, here comes we're going to distance ourselves, right? So now Trump's attorney, Sekulow, said he did not speak with Parnas at the event. Quote, he could have been at the dinner. I have no idea. There were a lot of people at the event. This is your classic Trump denial. Oh, I hardly knew the guy. I don't know if I talked to him. I don't know. I mean, look, Jeff Sessions used that. Trump has used that plenty of times. So many people that are around Donald Trump have used the similar, that sort of similar language. Like, I never knew him. It's coffee boy. It's some guy. And then you end up seeing a picture of them like right next to each other. That'll probably come out soon. You never know, right? But there was a picture of them all together already. That is already out. So it's funny that, again, they're going to continue to use that BS defense. And of course, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to use that on Giuliani as well. So now, as bad as this is, right now Giuliani is not facing actually any charges. But this is a significant increase in resources directed towards looking into Giuliani. Again, the DOJ working with the Southern District of New York. And they're looking at his ties, Giuliani's ties with Parnas, Fruman, what he did in Ukraine, who he worked for, who he worked with, his extensive travel, and of course, all of this is centered around the effort to try to pressure the Ukrainian government into doing political favors for Donald Trump in exchange for military aid. So for me, I believe that Giuliani kind of in a world of trouble. But as always, we do have to wait for more facts to come out. But so far, from what I see, not good for him. All right. Let's move on to the next story. All right, and more fun news. I should have been contemptible. I should have did that. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we got her. Sort of. Turns out that a federal judge has ruled that Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is in contempt of court. So now I'm going to explain what exactly she has to face because of this ruling and why. But this is according to Politico. DeVos was held in contempt by U.S. Magistrate Judge Sally Kim on Thursday, who imposed a $100,000 fine for violating an order to stop collecting on student loans owed by students of a defunct for-profit college. So now this has everything to do with Corinthian colleges, right? So Corinthian College, if you're not familiar, they were a for-profit college that were shut down back in 2015. Why? Because they were essentially defrauding students. They were selling worthless degrees, credits that didn't transfer, and they were making tons of federal student loan money off of students. So now the government ended up shutting them down. And so what about all the people that had student loans that were still outstanding from that college, whether they had graduated or not? Well, students that had graduated with large amounts of student loan debt were eligible from the Obama administration to get their student loans forgiven by the federal government. So now, as soon as Betsy DeVos comes into office as Secretary of Education, when she was appointed to the Department of Education, she refused to forgive those loans. Now, again, this was something that happened during the Obama administration. They were ordered, the Department of Education, to forgive those student loans. The money was supposed to be returned to those students for being defrauded. Betsy DeVos did everything that she could to try to stop it, slow it down, and make it harder for people to actually file these claims. And the ones that she was, and again, there's about 16,000 loans out there right now, borrowers that are eligible to have their student loans forgiven. And Betsy DeVos continues to block every single application for them to do so, right? So now the court got involved, and they said, no, you can't do that. You can't block people from actually being able to, have their student loans forgiven. You are supposed to. And this judge issued an injunction. And now Betsy DeVos has been found guilty of basically ignoring that injunction and continuing to charge these students on student loans that they shouldn't have to pay. Of course, that affects your credit score if you don't pay them, and that can affect a lot of things in life. Wages can be garnished, paychecks, Social Security benefits even. And so it's very important that there be some sort of restitution for these students that were ripped off and that the government stopped collecting on these loans. So now, U.S. Magistrate Judge Sally Kim had written in her decision, the evidence shows only minimal efforts to comply with the preliminary injunction she issued on May of 2018. Now, that injunction ordered the department to halt its collection of loans. They didn't. So now why would Betsy DeVos want to continue collecting on the loans? Well, because those are her buddies who make money off servicing the loans. Now, remember, the federal government is the main lender of student loans right now. But what the government does is they contract out the collection of student loans to these different corporations. That's why you have Sallie Mae. That's why you have Navient. That's why you have all these different companies, Nelnet, for example, that will service your student loans. That's why you actually pay them instead of paying the federal government. And of course, they make billions of dollars off this industry, especially off the interest, right? So now her friends, DeVos's friends, run these companies. And so let me give you some examples, right? So now Betsy DeVos had hired a man named Robert Eitel. Now, Robert Eitel is her senior advisor. And according to ABC News, was, quote, hired straight out of the for-profit college sector and helped dismantle regulations designed to protect students defrauded by for-profit colleges into taking out five-figure loans on promises that they would get good jobs. So now you've got the friends in the student loan servicing industry, and you also have her friends in the for-profit college industry. So now DeVos also invested in a firm tied to Performant. Now, Performant is a debt collection company, And before she was named education secretary and was required to divest from that company, within 90 days of her confirmation, she had a large stake in that company. So now, this company was accused of applying wage garnishments for debt already paid, calling debtors at work, calling family members of debtors at work, and other inappropriate and potentially illegal behavior. Now, one consumer complaint, to show you how bad this is, right? Posted online says Performant had repeatedly pestered a 90-year-old World War II veteran for a non-existent student loan with Wells Fargo. Again, this is a fake loan. It's not real, right? But they don't care. We're going to get this 90-year-old veteran to pay up anyway because we want extra money. This is their business. That's the business model that they run on. And Betsy DeVos was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invest in this company so that I can get a giant return on investment. And then I'm going to hire people from the for-profit college industry to then not regulate the for-profit college industry. Look, that's part of her plan, right? She wants to destroy higher education. She doesn't like higher education. So what's one way that you destroy higher education? You make it so that no one can afford to get one. Now, again, remember, she is a deeply religious person. Now, I don't have a problem with religion, right? But she is an extremist. She believes that higher education should be replaced or should be eliminated, and all education should be Christian-based, Bible-based education. So I don't agree with that, and most people don't. Now, if you want to go and get a religious education or go to a religious school, that's up to you. No, but she wants to dismantle the public education system and replace it with a system that basically echoes her Christian values, which are extremist Christian values, by the way, and not normal Christian values. And so what you have here is an effort to destroy access to college and to punish people who went to school and who took out student loans. So that's what's going on here. Now, not only that, but look, DeVos also has numerous conflicts of interest. So that's why she undercut her own department's investigations into deceptions committed by for-profit colleges. She even appointed a dean of one of the for-profit colleges being investigated to run the investigation team. Hey, guy from the industry that's being investigated, I'm going to appoint you to investigate yourself. What do you think is going to happen? Well, golly gee, it turns out I didn't find that we did anything wrong. But onward and forward, let's make some money. That's what this is about. She had also stopped sharing information about deceptive practices with outside prosecutors. And look, again, not only that, but DeVos has financial motives to protect these for-profit colleges. So now, one more important note, and this is kind of sad, actually. Yes, we've got some justice for the students, and that's great, and I'm going to explain how the students are going to benefit from this. But one bad thing about this is that, yes, while DeVos is named in the lawsuit, she is named in her official capacity as Secretary of Education, and so will not be personally responsible for paying $100,000 in sanctions. So that will not come out of her money. That sucks because I'd really love to have her see, or to see her have to give up one of her 10 yachts to pay this. But either way, there's a little bit of justice. The judge had ordered that the fine, $100,000, which is taxpayer money, go to a fund held by former Corinthian students' attorneys. That fund was set up to defray damages and expenses associated with improper collection of loans. So hopefully this money will find its way back into the hands of the students that were defrauded. She also ordered the government and the attorneys to come up with a plan for administering the fund. So, look, I believe that there needs to be some massive oversight of this fund to make sure that the government actually does what it's supposed to. Again, this is Betsy DeVos here, and the Trump administration that we're talking about, as well as a lot of people in the Department of Education that are the ones that, are defrauding these students in the first place. And basically stealing money is what they're doing. And so, yeah, there needs to be massive independent oversight to make sure that this money does find its way back into the hands of the people who were defrauded so that we can have some real justice. But as for the Trump administration is concerned, and the Department of Education under DeVos, this is a rather big loss and a great decision by the judge in this case. So at least there's, like I said, a little bit of justice here. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll thank some members, read some comments, and do that, and then we'll come back and we will talk about Syria. Really important development in Syria involving our forces, and of course, it's going to back up what I've been saying. This entire thing is about. So stay right here for that. Then we've got Republicans freaking out about impeachment, and then Biden goes super PAC. So we'll do all those stories right after the break coming up next. Stay right here around the nation.
Mike Pounds.
Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here at TWT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. That is my monitor. Okay. So we've got some comments, your guys' comments that I want to read that I found very interesting. So let's start with some member comments first with Ann Anderson, who says, when the president of the White House acts like a mob boss, his minions, unlike that, are too. No crime or evil is too small. You're absolutely right on that. Sarge Tech simply says, take the boats. Take the boats. Trust me, I could use one. I'm nowhere near the water, but I'd still take a boat. And then we have another member, Jeanette Villalona says, scammers are just crooks messing up your whole life. Yeah. So a little bit of a funny story. I don't know if you guys ever get those calls. I'm sure you probably do. I get these calls all the time about my car's extended warranty, right? So earlier today, I'm working on some stuff, and I get this call, right? And it's one of those, we'd like to talk about your extended warranty. And normally I just hang up on them, right? This time I was like, okay, let me talk to somebody. And so as soon as I hit the button, right, there's somebody with an Indian accent. Now, look, okay, let me be clear. This was more like, I think, an Indian call center, right? And so you do get a lot of spam calls from Indian call centers, but you also have legitimate calls from Indian call centers, right? Or Indian people who just happen to work at call centers. So I'm not like getting after Indian people for that, right? I'm just saying that she had an Indian accent. And so I'm like, okay. I said, hey, I don't have that particular vehicle anymore, so don't call me anymore. It's real nice. I didn't even get half that out before I was hung up on. So I took the number and I called it back, and it went to a voicemail machine. And I basically said, you want to talk about your car's extended warranty? Over and over again. It was kind of funny. I was really angry. So that's what I did to strike back. I don't know. It's probably some regular person of which they spoof their phone. Because I thought about that later. It's like, what if they're spoofing calls? Because that call, the reason I picked up is that it was like a town that was near me. And so I was like, uh-oh. I might have left someone a terrible message that might not have even called me because they spoofed the numbers. I didn't think about that because I was really, really angry. And so I hope not. Sorry. If you get that call from me and you didn't call me and you don't have nothing to do with my car's extended warranty, then I deeply apologize. But that was that today. Also, today, I had another thing happen to me about scamming. And it was while I was doing some work on my work computer, USA Today, right? So I was on the USA Today page, and I was, reading a story. And USA Today says, well, we're not going to work unless you disable your ad blocker. So I had to disable my ad blocker on Firefox in order to read the damn story. So I do that, and then later on, it comes up, and with a page, you must call Microsoft security. Hackers could get into your computer, and it's this red screen, and you can't click or close it, and it froze my computer. It just froze. I was like, God damn it, because I know that's not a real thing. I know that's a scam. And I looked it up later, and I was like, confirmed. I confirmed that it was a scam, right? So you don't call the number or give them any sort of personal information, right? And so I do that, but I can't open Control-Alt-Delete. It froze my entire computer, and all my notes and stuff were I had saved, but I hadn't saved the most recent. Within I don't know. I think I saved 15 minutes before, or the autosave got it. So I don't know how much work I was going to lose. So I was like, oh, come on, man. No. Unfreeze, unfreeze, unfreeze. Turns out it just crashed my browser. And so, crashed my browser. I sent in a report. All my work was fine. But still, man, it's those the critical alert from Microsoft. Oh, it's frustrating. And so again, USA Today, you suck because I can't even take off my ad block. And so now I got to go through later on and do some cleaning of my computer, get that adware out of there because that's where it comes from. Ridiculous adware from, of course, having to shut off your ad blocker. Okay, anyway. There was also another alert, by the way, speaking of scammers, that there were people basically going door to door posing as utility companies, right? Saying that, oh, you're overdoing your bills. Please give us money now. There was actually a police alert where I live about that. I was like, come on, man. Like, oh, please come to my house. Please. We'll have a conversation. Let's just say that. We'll have an interesting conversation. I might make you regret your life choices up till now. With conversation, of course. So, yeah, there's that. All right. That's just a brief history of the last 2 days of scammers. So I see it all the time. All right. So that went a little long, but nonetheless, fun. Couple more comments here before we get back to the show. Jonathan Andrzejczyk says that I thought Trump was concerned with corruption. It's almost like he was lying. Shocker. I know. We're all like shocked. And James Watson says Trump is not only going to continue destroying Obama's legacy, he's going to go after Social Security and Medicare. Well, that, of course, is guaranteed. In fact, his last 2 budgets had massive cuts for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. The largest amount of cuts, of course, were to come from Medicaid, nearly $1 trillion, but also Social Security and Medicare. And so, of course, when he goes out and he says, oh, I'm going to protect Medicare, protect Social Security, it's a complete lie. But I'm also not going to let Obama off the hook. During budget negotiations, this was way back in 2014, I believe, Obama literally put Social Security cuts on the table, something called change CPI, when he was trying to negotiate with Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in order to do some sort of budget deal, right? He said, I will put Social Security on the table. Now, the only thing that saved us from actually having a cut in Social Security benefits was the Republicans being too greedy and saying, no, that's not enough. So just remember that when you think about Barack Obama. Look, he's worlds better than what we have right now. But Obama, he is a centrist, he is a corporatist, and yes, he did try to cut Social Security. Remember that when you think about corporate Democrats. Okay. All right. Couple more things. Patrons. I want to give a shout out to Jessica Desa, Jim Green, Joe Andrechen, and John Perry. Channel members, I want to give a shout out to, let's see, Detective Faja, Frederick Turner, and Kathy Jo Simonton. So thank you. You can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TOATNation. It's where you can sign up to support the show. Or you can become a channel member. There's 2 different types of membership. There's just your basic. It's $1.99, just showing that you support us. And then there's the supporter level, which is your typical $4.99. So sign up. That goes to help the show. Q bounties, send those in as well. There's PayPal, and there's Venmo. There's all sorts of different ways. There's also merchandise. There's also T-shirts and coffee mugs and stuff. So check those out. There's links in the description to all the different ways that you can help the show. Okay. Anyway, that took a little long. So I got to hurry with some of these stories. Okay. Let's do it. But it turns out the U.S. government has finally given up any pretense of actually caring about the Kurds or any oppressed minority group in the Middle East. We have now revealed our real plan. Protect the oil. So this is according to an article I've seen in USA Today. The Pentagon is preparing to send tanks and armored vehicles to Syria. Again, not to protect the Kurds, because, look, we already have now a ceasefire between the Kurds and Turkish forces in the area. No, what we're doing is that we're sending it to protect the oil fields in Syria. In fact, quote, this is according to a U.S. official, the deployment of heavy armor to Syria would represent a significant escalation in the fight. Sorry, that's not a quote. Requiring a contingent of additional troops to operate and maintain those vehicles, as well as forces to protect their bases, according to the USA Today. So now, the deployment of, on Friday, Defense Secretary Mark Esper had confirmed in remarks in Brussels that the Pentagon is planning to send these armored vehicles, tanks, to protect oil fields from ISIS. Now, that, of course, is not true. ISIS has been mainly destroyed in that area. They're not going to sit there and hold the oil fields. No, in reality, they're actually going to hold it from the Russians, as well as the Kurds, as well as anyone else. So now, here's the thing, right? So now, earlier this week, Trump went out and said, we're finally, leaving the Middle East. Let them fight over the sand, right? No, that was never the plan. Remember, the troops weren't actually ever getting pulled out of Syria. Yes, they were pulled out of northern Syria. They were redeployed to Iraq, right? Or in different places in central and southern Syria, right? The reason that we moved is that you had this call between President Erdogan of Turkey and President Trump, after which suddenly Trump says, let's just going to pull out of everywhere, right? So we're just going to get out of the way of the way of the Turks. We're going to let them come in and take these areas. We don't care about them anyway. We don't care about the Kurds. We don't care about this. Oh, they're just fighting over sand anyway, as Donald Trump says. Now, in reality, no, it's not sand. No, the thing is that we pulled out and we basically gave the green light to the Turks to do ethnic cleansing in the area. And that has happened before. There's a little something called the Armenian genocide that happened in that same area where the Turks went in and did ethnic cleansing. And so here's what we have going on there. So now, of course, all they care about, the Trump administration does, is getting access to the oil. In fact, Esper says, quote, we want to make sure that they don't have access to the resources that may allow them to strike within the region, to strike Europe, to strike the United States. And he's still talking about ISIS as if that's like a thing, right? Like, basically, Esper is trying to gaslight us into saying, oh, look, we got ISIS in the area, so we're going to have to, and this is after, of course, Trump says, we completely annihilated and destroyed ISIS. It does not exist anymore. Well, what happened to the victory? Why are we sending more tanks? Of course, we're going to protect the oil. It's all about getting access to the oil, as we knew. So now, here's the thing, right? Before, and if I understand the situation correctly, before Trump removed our forces from northern Syria, we had the Kurds that were protecting the oil fields, right? Now, we left, again, giving the Turks a green light to do the ethnic cleansing, and then we come back into the area after that's over with, after we let the Turks do whatever they wanted to do. There's now a ceasefire in place, but now we come back to that area because we're going to protect the oil fields. So now, what happens here is at first, we just twisted the knife in the back of the Kurds. And make no mistake about it. We get out of there, we let the Turks do their thing, then we come back and we say, well, we were here to protect the oil the whole time. That's the message that we send, right? The Republicans never cared about the Kurds. In fact, yesterday, a Republican politician going and saying, hey, look, man, if they're going to do ethnic cleansing, if they're going to do it anyway, it's better that we just get out of the way and just let them do it. That was John Cornyn, by the way. And Trump, again, said, we're just going to let them fight it out over the sand. You idiot. It's not sand. It proves that Trump knows nothing. The area is actually part of the Fertile Crescent. It's actually great farmland. It's where agriculture literally began in the world. But Trump calls it sand, but then, of course, he's distracted by the fact that there's oil. So now, of course, we have conflicting messages from President Trump. In fact, he had said, quote, "I'm trying to get out of wars. We may have to get in wars too." This was during a cabinet meeting on Monday. Okay, so we have to get out, but then we have to get in. That doesn't make any sense. And yet, Thursday, the Pentagon says we're going to significantly escalate our presence in the region. Why? I think it's because somebody told them about the oil. Oh, there's oil there? Oh, there's oil. Oh, we're going to have to go take the oil. In fact, he said that before. He said if we're going to go into a country, if we're going to go into the Middle East, well, then we might as well take the oil while we're there. Even though I don't want to go in the first place, if we're going to go in, take the oil. It's not even our oil, by the way. It's technically Syrian oil, but Donald Trump doesn't care. If he sees oil there, he says, "Oh, my buddies in the oil industry, they're going to love this yummy oil. Go get them." So now Seth Jones, a national security expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, he saw this and he's like, this is very, very confusing U.S. policy. Well, look, I'm going to have to push back on that. It's not at all confusing. All you have to do is look at it in the context of U.S. foreign policy and what it has been for the last 30, 40 years. It's the oil, at least when it comes to the Middle East, right? And no, not just when you look at the Middle East. For example, look at North Korea, right? We've never invaded North Korea. We allowed them to get nuclear weapons. We allowed them to do massive human rights abuses. Why? North Korea doesn't have oil. Same in any other place where there's massive human rights abuses. But when it comes to every country that has oil, suddenly America's got to swoop in and say, "Well, we're just gonna end these human rights abuses and bring democracy to the region." No, it's about the oil. It's always been about the oil. And when you see it from that context, you'll see that Donald Trump's foreign policy strategy makes all the sense in the world. Because he didn't know, he was ignorant of that part of the country actually having oil and not being just sand. And now that he knows, he's like, "Oh, get back in there, get back in there. We got to escalate. We got to make sure nobody else but our corporations get the oil." Because again, originally he's such a racist that he thought, why not let the Kurds and Turks fight over it? They're both Arabs. They're both fighting over sand. Again, he knows nothing. It's not sand. They're not Arabs. But he leaves. The Turks come in. The Kurds leave. And now, interestingly enough, the Russians and the Turks are in the area that was once controlled by our allies, the Kurds. They controlled the area. They patrolled it along with U.S. patrols, and they controlled the oil fields. And we leave. Russia and the Turks come in because they have been working together much more closely now, as of late. They have access to the area where the oil is. And now our troops are being sent in to stop Russia from getting the oil. It's about our corporations, not about ISIS, but it's about our corporations versus the Russian corporations having access to that oil. It's all about profit. I'm going to go here to a quote from Nicholas Harris. He's an expert on Syria with the Center for New American Security. He said, quote, this, "Pure and simple. The Pentagon is making contingencies for a big fight with Russia for Syria's oil." It's true. It's all about the oil. It's always been about the oil. And it's another reason we need to get away from fossil fuels, because it's basically what right now, the only thing that drives our foreign policy. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to more politics. Now, Republicans are quietly freaking out about the possibility of losing public opinion battle over impeachment. Let me start that again. So Republican politicians are freaking out about the possibility of losing the public opinion battle when it comes to impeachment. So now, this is according to an article in The Hill, and it's got some fantastic quotes from several unnamed Republican senators Of course, they wouldn't want to go on the record because then they would earn the ire of Donald Trump. But these senators, because of how Donald Trump is handling impeachment by basically screaming onto Twitter, are not thrilled with him or his defense, to say the least. Now, let me give you these quotes. These are great. One Republican senator, as he vented some of his frustration, said, quote, "Does he need to be so unhinged? He says the dumbest things." I love it. More. Yes, this is the same congressman. There needs to be a coordinated response to everything. There needs to be a coordinated effort to just shut up. Referring to Trump. I love this. Oh, taste the schadenfreude. Okay, anyway. So now Republican lawmakers have also been saying that Trump and his political team desperately need to overhaul their strategy to, quote, regain momentum and prevent their party from losing the White House and a number of congressional seats next fall. So make no mistake, what they are looking out for is their own political future. Or, when it's quite simply, their power. They see Donald Trump and this impeachment as a way of them losing their power. So now, this is important, right? Because remember, these are Republican lawmakers, mostly senators, right? We know, and they know, they're never going to vote to remove the president. Oh, of course not. But they are afraid that impeachment will make Trump look so bad, and by extension the Republican Party, that he will lose in 2020 and he will drag down the rest of the Republican Party with him. In fact, there are a number of vulnerable Senate GOP incumbents that were named in this article. Again, the Senate would actually vote to convict and remove the president. And so that's why there is specific focus on the Senate. And so they name Suzanne Collins, Martha McSally, Cory Gardner, Joni Ernst, and Tom Tillis. Those are vulnerable Republican senators that they are worried about. And so they're desperately telling the White House, get a narrative and stick with it. And for God's sakes, rein in Donald Trump before he says something stupid. And again, this has been the message coming out during all of Donald Trump's legal troubles, is you've got to get this guy off Twitter. You've got to get him off Twitter. He is ruining his case. Yeah, I know. Good luck with that, right? As the article goes on to explain, it's not very easy. It's actually very difficult to try to rein in Trump, or to even attempt to rein in Trump causes a lot more problems. So now, there's a veteran Republican strategist, by the way, who also told The Hill that he thinks that Trump's reelection chances are below 50%. And he cites the fact that his negatives are so high. In fact, the only way that Donald Trump could win another election is if someone more unpopular jumped into the race. Oh, but of course, that would never happen, would it? And the Democrats would never nominate someone so unpopular to challenge Trump, right? Okay. But anyway, now the strategist did acknowledge, however, that many of his peers argue that the 2020 battle for the White House is still 50-50. So Republicans are like, I think we got a chance. But Donald Trump's got to shore up his messaging. Now, that's really telling when your allies think that it's a possibility that they could lose this because Donald Trump is simply being Donald Trump. So now, let me get to a Trump ally who was on the record, and this is Senator Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham said this, quote, "What's missing here, I think, is that coordinated effort to put somebody in charge of developing a message and delivering it." He also says that I believe that's about to be corrected, adding, I hope. You would hope. So now, Graham also admitted in an Axios on HBO interview that Trump had made some missteps, right? Specifically pointing out that it was a bad idea to ask China to investigate the Bidens. He said it was, quote, stupid. True. Now, other Trump allies say the president's frequent zigging and zagging makes it tough to defend him against Democratic attacks, even though they acknowledge that past efforts to tamp down on Trump's tweeting have proved to be unsuccessful. Quote, and this is Kevin Kramer, was a Republican on the record from North Dakota. He said, I think it could be helpful to have a more professional, coordinated communications effort. However, you have to be very careful not to prohibit Donald Trump from being Donald Trump. And that's a risky run when you start institutionalizing these things. Kramer goes on to say that Trump's unpredictability makes it tough for GOP allies to defend the president. Quote, the reason it's difficult is sometimes he changes his midstream, and that's when it happens you find yourself out on a limb that has suddenly been cut off. The lack of that sort of institutional discipline does make it more difficult for the rest of us, if you will, as we're trying to carry his message. So now first he says, and this is great, I mean, you can't just prohibit Trump from being Trump, but you also have to have a coordinated message, but Donald Trump won't let you have a message because then he will later on contradict that message. So you're basically left with doing nothing because Donald Trump's an idiot. And he doesn't know how to do communications. He doesn't know how to do strategy. And most importantly, he doesn't know how to shut up. And so he ends up hurting himself and the people who are out defending him. And that's why we've had so many different press secretaries. They just can't defend him because it's indefensible. So now here's the thing. If you have that situation, then how are you going to get a message across? Well, you can't. That's the problem. And that's why they don't have a message, because they can't stick with one because Trump constantly changes. And then the president comes up with new lies, and as more and more wrongdoings come to light. So there's a huge, huge problem, right? So in reality, these Republicans, they're venting because they're in an impossible situation. They're trying to defend the most difficult person to defend, who is, like I said, mental. He is not there. And has no idea what he's doing. And he changes his stories on a whim. He throws everyone else under the bus. And so what do you do? If you're one of these Republicans in Congress, do you actually counteract Trump? Now, the reason that they don't is because they're cowards. They don't want to counteract the base, right? Because the base, of course, actually doesn't care when Donald Trump lies, changes his story, throws people under the bus, cheats. There's almost nothing that he can do that these diehard Trump supporters won't actually continue to support him. And so what do you do when you're one of these Republicans that are like, I can't defend this? And I don't want to defend this. But then again, I don't want to lose my seat. I don't want to lose my power. And that's what this is about. And so as usual, you're going to have these Republicans that, yes, they will go to the media and they will talk about this and they will vent frustration. And they'll do that. But when it comes to actually publicly speaking out, they refuse to do it because they're absolute cowards. And it's all due to their political ambitions. Okay. One more story here. Yeah, we're going over. We're going to talk about Joe Biden. That's pretty good. I'm proud of that one. So Joe Biden is running into some fundraising problems, but lucky for him, he has got some friends, some very, very wealthy friends that are now setting up a super PAC. So now the reason, of course, is that his fundraising has fallen way behind both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, as well as Donald Trump. By the way, he's raising lots of money as well. And there is some significant concern that he will not be able to finish out the primary, that he will not be able to afford to continue to run. So now, look, that's kind of a bold thing to say, considering how Joe Biden still leads in national polls. But look, I base this on fundraising numbers, his past primary performances, and of course, how worried the Democratic establishment is. And so, look, you've got people talking about jumping into the race. Michael Bloomberg, who was a billionaire, instead of financing the race, by the way, Bloomberg says, well, I might jump in. You have other people talking about jumping in. Names like Michelle Obama are being floated. And even, yes, Hillary Clinton. Yikes. So that kind of shows you how his campaign is at this point kind of a zombie, like a walking corpse. Okay. So now he knows it. Biden does, because he's aware of his fundraising numbers, which is why in this last ditch effort, Biden's corporate supporters are jumping to the rescue to create a brand new super PAC. So now let me go to a report here in Bloomberg. He said they said with this move, Biden has reversed a position from earlier this year when he rejected support from super PACs. Now that a lot of Democratic candidates, thanks to of course Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, said we're not going to take corporate money. Now, everyone else, basically everyone who has said that, has backtracked on that. In fact, newest story here, along with Joe Biden, you have Andrew Yang, who's saying, I'm okay with super PACs. And then you had, of course, Elizabeth Warren, who said that she would take corporate money or PAC money in the general election. So that's not good, right? So the only one here that doesn't take corporate PAC money, will never take super PAC money, is, of course, Senator Bernie Sanders. So now, let me go here to the article in The Intercept, written by Lee Fong. So now he wrote, though Biden has pledged not to take contributions from registered lobbyists, the prohibition appears not to apply to big dollar organizers of his super PAC. Among the individuals involved with the effort are several lobbyists for leading corporations and even foreign governments. So now let me give you some examples. One of them is Larry Raske. Now, Larry Raske is one of the people that are involved with the super PAC and is the founder of lobbying firm Raske Partners. Raske Partners currently is registered to lobby on behalf of Raytheon, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and the Republic of Azerbaijan, as well as other clients. So that's a lobbying firm. So now you also have Steve Shale. Steve Shale is a former campaign strategist for the Obama administration, and he's a registered state lobbyist with Cardenas Partners. Cardenas Partners, of course, is a Florida lobbying firm founded by former Jeb Bush advisor Al Cardenas. Now, Shale's current client list includes the Florida Hospital Association, JetBlue Airways, State Farm Insurance, Walt Disney Parks, AT&T, and the Associated Industries of Florida. So you've got all these, lobbying firms that are lining up that represent all these large corporate interests that are now pitching in, of course, to help Joe Biden. And as The Intercept has reported, despite Biden's promise to reject lobbyist money, his campaign, launched with a fundraiser, hosted at the home of Comcast chief lobbyist. And his political action committee has a long record of accepting lobbyist money. Oops. So much for that promise, right? And now, like I said, there's a long list of corporate donors that are now behind the super PAC. Now, one of the central figures here is Bernard Schwartz. Now, Bernard Schwartz is a wealthy financier who has organized dinners with prominent centrist Democrats, meeting with Pete Buttigieg, for example, in order to prevent Bernie Sanders from gaining the Democratic nomination. Now, he is in talks to fund that new super PAC. Now, Schwartz is known, according to The Intercept, for deep-pocketed donations. And in 2016 alone, Schwartz, through his foundation, gave $1 million to the centrist think tank Third Way. Now, the reason, of course, that they're going to super PACs and large donations is because Joe Biden has no grassroots support. His campaign, according to the most recent filings, is about $8.9 million cash on hand. Bernie Sanders, to compare, his campaign has $33 million cash on hand, and Senator Elizabeth Warren has about $25 million. So Bernie Sanders, when it comes to the money race, is leading everyone. And why that is not bigger news, I have no idea. Maybe there's an establishment media blackout on Bernie Sanders. Could be. Now, Bernie Sanders, by the way, he takes no corporate money. He's outraised essentially everyone, and he's done so by not taking big corporate money. In fact, unlike Sanders, Biden relies on a relatively small pool of elite donors who have already maxed out with $2,700 donations. Bernie Sanders has $1.5 million donors, and the great majority of them will never max out. And he continues to get more and more donors. So it's not hard to see that when you don't have super PACs, This is a gigantic advantage for Bernie Sanders over Biden. Not only is it a big money advantage, it's also an optical advantage. Bernie Sanders can say, look, I've raised money from regular working class people, and I'll give you that breakdown in a minute. Whereas, where's Joe Biden getting his money? Large corporate donors, which of course he is going to serve those donors. Now, ironically, Joe Biden pointed out the problem in taking corporate money or large donations. This was during a fundraiser. Quote, it's human nature if you, Lynn, bundle $250,000 for me. All legal, and then you call me after I'm elected and say, Joe, I'd like to talk to you about something. You didn't buy me, but as a human, but it's human nature. You help me. I'm going to say, sure, Lynn, come on in. And he added that the front of the line is always filled with people whose pockets are filled. Meaning that, look, if you give me money, of course you're going to be at the front of the line. Well, these corporations and these large donors and these bundlers as well, they're giving me large donations. So, of course, I'm going to serve their interests first. But you haven't bought me, though. Oh, no, you didn't buy me. No, you're just at the front of the line. Come on, really? Does anybody believe that? That doesn't sound like helping a candidate. It sounds like an auction. Because that's exactly what this is. So here's the thing, right? The American people are actually really tired of lobbyists and special interests that are buying our politicians. Joe Biden is going this route because everybody knows he works for special interests. That's why he doesn't have grassroots funding. That's why he doesn't have small donors. That's why his major donations have dried up, because he's got that small pool of people who have already maxed out their donations. So where does he have to go now? The super PACs, corporate lobbyists. That's where he has to go. Independent expenditures. So, look, remember, and this is the reason why he's getting all those donors, these large donors, is because he told them that nothing would fundamentally change with him in charge. The donors love that. Why? Because they got rich off the status quo. So they don't want things to change. They don't want Americans to get health care. No. They think the system is fine the way it is because they get to make money off that system. But you know who didn't do well in that time? The 99%. And that's who is funding Bernie Sanders. In fact, according to campaign filings, Sanders is the top recipient of donations among farmers, servers, social workers, retail workers, like people from Amazon, for example, photographers, construction workers, truckers, nurses, drivers, and teachers. In fact, the top contributor to Bernie Sanders by job, by occupation, are teachers. That's the working class of America. That is who Bernie Sanders is going to represent, because that is who's funding Bernie Sanders. It's almost as if they want to give to the people who actually do want to represent them and not someone who represents the big donors. And I'm sorry, but Joe Biden, with this move, only shows that he serves the donors. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream. Please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation, or becoming a channel member by hitting the join button below. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe. We've got clips going out today. In case you missed any of the show. Other than that, you guys have a fantastic weekend. Thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See you guys on Monday. You have a great weekend.
Please clap.
Mike Pounds.
Please clap.